Good morning, dear students of class 12. Welcome to this online English learning class. Today in your class, we are going to further continue with the lesson Deep Water by William Douglas. In the first part, we discussed about the author, a brief background about this author, and this lesson is an autobiographical part of the selection which the author has shared with us his phobia of water, and it is an extract from his book of Men and Mountains. Now, in the first part, we also discussed that how he developed an aversion for water when he had gone with his father for surfing in the California beach. And there a wave struck him down and he got very scared, but his father took it in a very lighter manner. But then the small child developed an aversion for water. Later on, when he was 10 or 11 years old, he decided to learn swimming and he enrolled himself at the YMCA pool in Yakima. The Yakima River was treacherous, and his mother, like all mothers, she was very worried about her son, and she kept on telling him in detail about each drowning incidents in the river. But the YMCA pool was safe. It was 2 or 3 feet at the shallow end, while 9 feet at the other, and even the drop was very gradual. It was not steep. So the YMCA pool was very safe. This is how he tried to convince his mother. He learned swimming initially with a pair of water wings and by aping the other boys. 2 or 3 days passed and he developed some sort of confidence. He was gathering confidence, building up confidence. But one day an incident happened in his life which was a misadventure. And he had come to the pool early that day and he was just waiting for other boys to come when a strong boy, around 18 years old, he just came, strongly built, and he tossed him into the pool all of a sudden. Now, young William was taken aback, but he was definitely frightened, but not out of wits. He made a strategy while he was going down into the pool that he would hit the bottom with force, and then with the same force he would come to the surface like a cork. And as he would come up, he would paddle to the edge of the pool. This strategy of his, he tried once, it did not work. He, instead of coming up, he was going down further. And he tried the second time, but the second time also, it seemed that the strategy was not working. He was surrounded with water and he felt a throbbing pain. His lungs were all filled with water. And he tried to muster up all his strength to come out of water. But he was not able to. Instead, he was going down. So, his second attempt had also failed. Now, we'll continue with the lesson further. And then in the midst of the terror came a touch of reason. I must remember to jump when I hit the bottom. At last I felt the tiles under me. So there was some sort of reason in the middle of terror that made him try another attempt. He thought that he is going to hit the bottom with force, and he could even feel the tiles under him. My toes reached out as if to grab them. I jumped with everything I had. So he is trying his level best to hit the bottom with force so that he could come up, working on the strategy that he had planned earlier. But the jump made no difference. The water was still around me. I looked for ropes, ladders, water wings, nothing but water. A mass of yellow water held me. Stark terror took an even deeper hold on me, like a great charge of electricity. I shook and trembled with fright. He was shaking with fear. My arms wouldn't move. Even his arms would not move. My legs wouldn't move. So his legs also became rigid. I tried to call help, to call for mother. So when he had worked on his strategy, it did not work. The only resort was that he tried calling for help and calling his mother in hope that somebody would come to help him out. And then strangely there was light. I was coming out of the awful yellow water. At least my eyes were. My nose was almost out too. So he was able to come out of water. He could see, his eyes were out, and even his nose seemed to be coming out of water. So then I started down a third time. I sucked for air and got water. The yellowish light was going out. Then all efforts ceased. So the third attempt had also failed and he was going down. Then all efforts ceased. I relaxed. Even my legs felt limp, weak, and a blackness swept over my brain. It wiped out fear. It wiped out terror. There was no panic. He had stopped struggling, and he was no more panicking. It was quiet and peaceful, nothing to be afraid of. This is nice to be drowsy, to go to sleep. It seemed he had stopped struggling, and he was prepared to uh, go to sleep. No need to jump, struggle. He had left too tired to jump. It's nice to be carried gently, to float along in space, tender arms around me. He could feel soft arms around him, tender arms like mother's. He remembered his mother, the soft touch of his mother. Now I must go to sleep. It seemed as he was drowsy and he had fallen to almost sleep, unconsciousness. I crossed to oblivion, and the curtain of life fell. So he was almost dying. He could not remember anything. He had lost consciousness. He was unconscious. The next I remember, I was lying on my stomach beside the pool vomiting. So when he regained his consciousness, he was by the side of the pool and lying on his stomach and vomiting. The chap that threw me in was saying, "But I was only fooling. Someone said the kid nearly died. Be all right now. Let's carry him to the locker room." So the boy who had thrown him was being reprimanded, and he tried to defend himself by saying that I was just playing a joke. Douglas was carried to the locker room. Several hours later, I walked home. I was weak and trembling. When he was able to uh, get better, he was taken home, but he was still weak and trembling. I shook and cried when I lay on my bed. The nightmare of almost facing death kept bothering him, and he cried, and he was terribly shaken. I could not eat that night. For days a haunting fear was in my heart. He could not get away from this fear of drowning. The slightest exertion upset me, making me wobbly in the knees and sick to my stomach. So several days he carried the haunting fear of nearly drowning and facing death. I never went back to the pool. I feared water. I avoided it whenever I could. So this nightmare was with him throughout, and he could not bear the sight of water. A few years later, when I came to know the waters of the Cascades, I wanted to get into them. So he wanted to go and enjoy. And whenever I did, whether I was wading the Teton or bumping river or bathing in warm lake of the boat rocks, the terror that had seized me in the pool would come back. The sight of water would made him recollect that fearful experience of drowning. It would take possession of me completely. My legs would become paralyzed. Icy horror would grab my heart. So he had developed a phobia for water. This handicap stayed with me as years rolled by. Years rolled by, and Douglas grew up, but he still carried the fear of water. In canoes on Maine lakes, fishing for landlocked salmon, bass fishing in New Hampshire, trout fishing on the Deschutes and Meteors in Oregon, fishing for salmon on the Columbia, at Bumping Lake, in the Cascades. Wherever I went, the haunting fear of the water followed me. It ruined my fishing trips, deprived me of the joy of canoeing, boating, and swimming. So, wherever he went, the haunting fear was with him, and it spoiled his holidays, his fishing trips, and it took away from him the joy of canoeing, boating, and swimming. Remember one thing, students, your entire life is disturbed. You are not able to lead a normal life if you live with one or the other phobia or fear. Similarly, the narrator, William Douglas, felt that his normal life was getting affected. I used every way I knew to overcome this fear, but it held me firmly in its grip. So one day he decided that he should do something to uh, to fight out this fear, to remove this fear. And finally, one October, I decided to get an instructor to learn to swim. I went to a pool and practiced 5 days a week. So this was the schedule under which he learned under a trainer and instructor. From October it started, and 5 days a week, an hour each day. The instructor put a belt around me. A rope attached to the belt went through a pulley and ran on an overhead cable. He held on the end of the rope, and we went back and forth across the pool, hour after hour, day after day, and week after week. So, with all safety precautions keeping in mind, first his fear of water had to be removed. So, the instructor put a belt around him, and this belt was attached to a rope, and then it was attached through a pulley which ran over an overhead cable. And the instructor held the one end of the rope, and with the help of this rope which was attached to a pulley, he went back and forth in water. So his fear of water was removed like this. On each trip across the pool, a bit of panic seized me. Each time the instructor relaxed his hold on the rope, I went under. Some of the old terror returned and my legs froze. It was 3 months before the tension began to slacken. So this sort of exercise he was given for 3 months. Then he taught me how to put my face under water and exhale, and to raise my nose and inhale. I repeated the exercises hundreds of times. Bit by bit, I shed part of the panic that seized me when my head went under water. So breathing exercises he was given, he was taught, inhaling and exhaling in water. We'll stop here and we'll continue with this in tomorrow's class. Thank you.